Welcome to Silicon Valley Nonprofits, a service of KMVT Community Media. I'm Bev Lenahan, your host, and today we are happy to have with us Sharon Winston, Executive Director and CEO of Project Hired. Thanks for coming today. It's nice to have you, Sharon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and opportunity.
Oh, good. Well, Project Hired, I've known of you for a while, but a lot longer. You've been in business 40 years. I haven't known you that long. So just share with us, who do you serve, and why is that important to our viewers?
Well, thank you. Two very important questions without a doubt. First off, we serve individuals, and we focus on vets, but we serve individuals with disabilities who want to return to work. And our vision as an organization is to actually defeat unemployment amongst the disabled community. So what we're really also defeating is poverty, homelessness. We're really working with the community to get people back to work and be full-fledged citizens. So it really makes a wonderful difference within the community itself. So we welcome anyone with a disability. They have to be 18 years of age, and a doctor's note. We don't care which kind of disability, as long as they feel themselves they can go back to work independently, part-time or full-time.
And you work with vets, too.
We love vets. They make up, both as part of our program, about 25% of our clients, and then as far as my employees, they make up 30% of the employees I have, and I employ a large group of severely disabled individuals in my call centers, which we can talk about a little bit later.
Sure. To your credit.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about why what you do is so important to our community.
I think more than anything else, it's to recognize that individuals with disabilities make up literally 20% of the population of the United States. So 1 in 5 Americans happens to be disabled. The part that's hard for everyone to sort of get their mind around that is that 70% of disabilities we cannot see. They are invisible. And so in that particular case, when a vet returns from service or war and he has PTSD, you can't see that. Or if someone acquires epilepsy a little bit later in life, or someone's going through a cancer battle, or any kind of a disability that can't be seen, then 70% of that is not something we would recognize right off the bat. So our services are particularly important to cover that large a population, 1 in 5 Americans. And it's true around the world also, that population. And so they deserve to have an opportunity to get services that really help them get back to work. It's a really key element of what we do.
That's an incredible number, 1 in 5.
Yes, it is.
Unbelievable.
Yes, it is.
And I would guess the majority of that is the unseen that we don't know.
It really is. And a couple things I'd also add. 83% of us are going to age into our disability. And so, unfortunately, it's true. We acquire conditions as we get older. And one of the things that I always like to emphasize to people that makes our services so important is that as you acquire a disability, that's where we can really help people who come into our services. Because very often they have to sort out, okay, I know what I used to do. What can I do now? And then how do I go out and get a job doing it? And very often you have to balance benefits, receiving benefits because of a disability, along with the work that you would like to do. So I think as we are also aging into this, another element that's really important to consider, we all are going to have to work longer in order to support a longer lifetime.
Absolutely.
Which means we age into our disability. We then have to still work in order to support ourselves and our family members. And so it's quite a challenge when we look ahead to the future. And that's what Project Hired is doing, and that's why we're here in the community.
So I really think that's such a poignant point that you make about the aging disabilities, because so many people I know really do have to work probably until they're almost 80. And they don't want their employers or their prospective employers to know that they might have a disability. So I imagine when they try to hide it, it gets to be a challenge too. So
I think
I'm
that's
sure
a great
training's a lot of what you do.
Correct. And I think that's a great topic that you bring up, which is what we call self-identification when it comes to disability. And there's such an extreme reluctance to be seen as someone different inside your population or your work team, or even sometimes inside your family.
Yes.
And yet, the more we talk about what it means to have a disability or to have a challenge that you're overcoming, the wiser we are as a society, because frankly, it affects all of us. And if not each individual directly, then it affects us within our family or our work unit. And so when we talk with people about what it's like to identify as an individual with a disability, one of the things we also talk about and we train for inside our workshops is how do you talk about accommodation? Because the honest truth is, once you accommodate someone's disability, and most accommodations cost well under $400, one time only, to any business who has to make the accommodation.
That seems quite low.
It is very low, and it's all the statistics show that. And the probability is that the actual accommodation you usually have to make is to a part-time schedule and a chance for the individual perhaps to get to a doctor appointment. Once the accommodation is made, treat them just like any other individual on the team, which I know because I walk and talk the business of helping individuals with disabilities as well as employing them, and then just make sure they perform their job. But the accommodation piece is so small, and if all of us can start this conversation and be inclusive, and we have a lot of companies now that we're working with where we're starting the conversation, how do you welcome someone with any kind of a disability or any kind of diversity and make them feel included? Because frankly, it's all of us.
Well, I think a lot of employers do want to, but they don't know where to start.
Correct.
And so that's where you can step in and be that liaison with the training on your side and the communicator to the employer, prospective employer, on what accommodation really means.
Correct. And then
Tell us about some of your programs.
Yeah, and then how to welcome them into the team, which is really critical.
Yes, yes.
So our programs at Project Hired, they're all free. So we work really hard to make sure we have funds to pay for all the services. So any individual who comes and is accepted into our program, they have at least a year to work through 9 to 10 different workshops that we offer. And we encourage them on the workshops to take them a couple of different times. And it's like any other job search skills training that you would see. You first have to figure out, what do I want to do? What can I do? How do I get that into my resume? How do I get my resume out to people? So how do I search out where I want to go? How do I manage my interview? How do I manage the negotiations for my job? And then we're really proud of the fact that we have average placement rate in 5.4 months. And when you consider we have a lot to go through.
That's amazing.
Yes, 5.4 months. And so then we also help them with not only negotiating the job, but onboarding. We give them lots of ideas about how to onboard themselves. And then we work with them for 90 days after they acquire their position, so we can help them do the onboarding, manage any situations they come across. Because it's tough on a new job, period, for anybody.
Oh, absolutely.
Correct.
I'm thinking how many people sat that first week and looked around and wondered, what the heck am I supposed to be doing here?
Exactly. So how do you talk to your boss? And it's usually not going to be any different than it is, for anybody else. But we also want them to have the courage and confidence. And that's probably the most important thing we build over at Project Hired is confidence. Remember who you are, and you are valuable, and you can do a job.
Well, I remember being fortunate enough to do a workshop on behavioral interviewing for Project Hired. And it was so interesting to see the difference between the beginning, when they were really reluctant to tell a story about themselves, to the end of our training, where they had 3 or 4 stories that they could tell a prospective employer and really make that part of who they are. Have the confidence to project that rather than apologize for it or not mention at all.
Exactly, exactly, without question.
Well, tell us a little bit more about how you work with vets and what some of these programs are that you actually work with them
I'd be
about.
happy to. So this actually takes us up to the other part of the business that we run. We have 3 call centers at the VA administrative centers in Fresno, Palo Alto, and San Francisco.
Very good.
So we're very proud. My operators, I think I've 26 right now, operators who are all severely disabled, answer 1 million calls from the vets every single year. And
1 million annually?
1 million annually, and transition those out to 3 hospitals hospitals and 16 clinics. So we're the very first human voice that a vet hears when they call in. So naturally, I want vets on those staffs.
Yes.
So what we do is we have an emphasis on vets in our free services program. So we're always reaching out to them and saying, be sure to come and use our services. And then I place about 10% of the people who come into the program, I tend to place into my call centers if in fact they don't find jobs outside in the commercial world.
What a great training ground for them.
Oh, it really
is.
is.
In the call center.
Absolutely.
Learn so much about people skills.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's not an easy job. So that the skills they bring, which would be, I think, compassion, the willingness to listen, but also the ability to say, let's move on. Let's get you to the doctor or the clinic and like that. So it's a good job, but it also has its own stresses because we're dealing with human beings every moment. And our vets have had a few challenges with the VA. So, yeah, we're the first voice they hear, so we often hear about those challenges.
I'll bet you do.
Which everyone is trying to solve the best they can as fast as they can.
For sure. Well, so this is the question I would ask. Are people with disabilities harder to manage than other people?
No.
In a word.
In a word, and the surveys prove it. And then I would offer up that I spent, probably 40 years in commercial America, corporate America, working first for a large regional bank here, Great Western Bank, and then also for Adecco. And I worked at one of their subsidiaries, Lee Hecht Harrison. I have managed thousands of employees in the regional responsibility and projects that I've had. And very honestly, once an accommodation is made for an individual with a disability, they are the same human beings that I managed when I thought I didn't have any disability. So the additional thing that comes up, though, and the surveys also support this, is that an individual with a disability who actually gets on your team, they tend to be more loyal, show up earlier and more often. But the key thing is they're more innovative. And they're more innovative primarily because with a disability, you have to innovate all day long.
Yes, you're adapting continually.
Exactly, exactly. And you're thinking around, through, and under problems. And that sometimes is not what our employees are doing, but those individuals who've had to overcome disabilities, that's what they do all day long, and they do it exceptionally well.
Oh, that's grand news. So we have only a short time. Tell us about a success story, one of the people who comes to mind.
The one that comes to my heart the fastest?
Yes, absolutely.
That's going to be Denise. And so she's a great example of many of the things we've talked about today. Denise was brought in by a friend, sort of dragged in from the parking lot to our reception area. And she said, well, I'm sure you guys can't help me, I'm just having a terrible time. And once we had a chance to sit down and talk to Denise, we found out a couple of things. She had acquired her disability, she has two, relatively within the last 5 years. And she was probably about 55 when she came to us. She had also recently lost her husband rather suddenly. So she was going through a traumatic, life-changing event, and also being on her own after a long-term marriage. So she really felt, I don't think you guys can help. And so I just said to her in a very nice way, and my staff was there, why don't you just let us try? So she came in and she started to go through the workshops, and the blooming that you mentioned when you taught your workshop is exactly what happened to her. She started remembering a little bit about who she was and how she could do things, and we started working with her. We got her through the 4th workshop, and then we put it into our CWIP program, which is our Client Work Experience program.
Oh, good.
Put her up at the front desk, and she became a bouquet of flowers, if I might say.
Oh, cool.
She just absolutely started knocking it out of the park. She started to laugh. She remembered who she was. And so it was wonderful to see her answer the phones, manage clients who were coming in. And I hired Denise.
Oh, very good.
She is still in my Palo Alto call center doing a fantastic job.
Good. So as we end up here, tell people how they can get a hold of Project Hired. I'm sure they've got family members or themselves who might have a need.
Wonderful. And so you can look us up on the internet, so projecthire.org, and you can find us very, very easily when you put the inquiry in. And so then you go out to the website, you can take a look at what the organization has to offer. Also, our number is 408-557-0880 that you can get hold of us. And I'll give you my direct personal number.
Oh, my.
Oh, absolutely, because I'd love anybody to give me a call and so we can talk about that. 408-557-4312 for Sharon Winston. Be happy to talk to you about yourself or another individual that you want to help.
Wonderful. You're doing grand work. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being with us today. Good fortune to you and Project Hired.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege, Bev. Thank you.